I'd like to explore with you this morning um, the heart's release and autumn and falling. I feel like I've been falling for several months now. And it's more an awareness, I think, at this time of year of the fall and watching leaves fall from the trees. But it seems somehow that I've got in touch with the falling that we all do throughout our lives, alongside all the other processes that happen to us. There's a statement from Koben Chino Roshi where he interprets the final lines of the Heart Sutra. And he interprets it as falling apart, falling apart. Everything is falling apart. Everything is always falling apart. Nothing to do. And I've been holding that koan throughout September and early October because Trudy and I booked a holiday in Brixham Harbour in Devon. We booked to go and stay on a fishing boat, and the image that we had was that we would be rocked by the waves gently in this fishing boat. We could watch the life of the harbour and the wildlife and the tides coming and going. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? What actually happened was on the first day, my back went and I was unable to move. And usually when it goes, it heals in a couple of days. So I thought, that's fine. I can move around a little bit maybe, but it'll be all right in a couple of days. But I've never experienced back pain like it. And so for the nights we were on the boat, I was unable to go down to the hold where the bedroom is. It's down a vertical ladder where Trudy was sleeping and where most of our possessions were. So I slept on an extended cushion from a lounger on the deck in the small kitchen. So all of my life was reduced to just lying on this cushion with the boat rocking through the night and hearing the seagulls and the sounds of the harbour, and only once in the night being able to just about make it to the toilet and back. And as I lay there, I wondered what was to become of us, because we were right on the edge of the harbour, and to get out you have to walk along a long pontoon, which when there's a sea swell goes up and down, it undulates. And there was something about the finality of just not being able to move in the way that I usually do. And I'm used to having a very able body. And so as I lay there was a completely new experience of helplessness for me. And then as the sea swells came in, Trudy became seasick. So neither of us were highly functional on this holiday, and there was a question of how we would actually get off the boat. And there was an osteopath about 15 minutes walk away, and I managed to get the one cancellation that he had in 3 weeks. It was about a 45-minute walk for me to get to him, but that was a blessing. And the other blessing is that we saw Ra on the third day, and she was so kind and helped us to identify a flat that we could flee to in Torquay. And while I waited at her house, she went with Trudy and completely unpacked the boat and helped her find this flat late in the evening in Torquay and set up for us. So kindness was right at the end of what I would describe as this falling, this life as it is on the boat. In the Fourfold Way, the anthropologist Angelise Arian identifies 4 basic human addictions. She describes these as life-negating patterns that underlie all addictions, whether to drugs, food, work, or sex. And these 4 basic addictions are the addiction to intensity. And this shows up when love is lacking. The addiction to knowledge. This is the opposite of wisdom. The addiction to focusing on what's not working rather than what is working. And what's missing here is the big picture. And the addiction to perfection. This appears when true excellence is misunderstood and true power is unrealized. I wonder for you which mix of addictions arise when you hear of those 4: intensity, knowledge, what's wrong, and perfection. I'm aware for me it's perfection. I have an addiction to being perfect, and this what I would describe as this falling, this just not being able to move, was so challenging to me. And the mantra, the koan, falling apart, everything is always falling apart, was so helpful in being able to meet that. So later in our holiday, most of the time we were resting up really to be able to come home and feeling grateful that we have a home to come to, and also people who were concerned about us and who were even offering to come and sort of drive us home. But I was curious where my mind went during that time, and what kind of gifts appeared to kind of understand what was happening to me, which felt like part of a whole process over months. And I really like tennis. I like watching tennis on television. And one evening, while I was resting, I watched the US Open men's final between Djokovic and Medvedev. For entertainment, I like watching tennis. But actually, I became fascinated by it in a very different way. It was offering me a mirror of my own process and also a teaching. So Djokovic was, if he had won, it would have been a record-setting 21st major and the first calendar year Grand Slam in men's tennis for 52 years. And although he'd played a lot more time on the court than Medvedev, he was expected to win. And you may know he has this wonderful game. It's sort of perfect, really. It is perfection. And as I watched, I saw someone really struggling to be perfect. In the first set, he was playing amazingly well, but Medvedev was just too good for him. And at one point, he was slapping his legs to sort of say, come on, we can do this, trying to overcome what began to look inevitable, that he wasn't going to make it. And I understand that for a lot of the time that he's played in America, he's not been entirely popular. But the crowd began to sort of shift towards him. It was very touching to see a shift in their kind of love for him. And as we got into the third set, and he was really going down, he was falling. Between in the last changeover, he just wept into his towel. And it was clear this amazingly perfect record was just not going to happen. And what I was really touched by was what he said when he was interviewed at the end of the match. He said, I would like to say that tonight, even though I have not won the match, my heart is filled with joy and I'm the happiest man alive because you guys made me feel very special. You guys touched my soul. I mean, that's the reason on the changeover I just teared up. The emotion, the energy was so strong. I've never felt like this in New York. Honestly, I've never felt like this. I love you guys. Thank you so much for your support. I love you and I'll see you soon. And then when he was asked to describe his emotions as he slumped in his chair, after losing a match weighted with greater history than any of the 1,175 that came before it, he said, it was a relief. I was just glad that finally the run is over. And at the same time, I feel sadness, disappointment, and also gratitude for the crowd and for the special moment that they've created for me on the court. And my sense of that is that as we meet these addictions and as we move through them, something is there when we fall, something that we can learn from and we can open to. And I wonder what it is that I can open to and you can open to as we actually fall together. We talk about this practice as walking hand in hand. And I wonder if it's also falling hand in hand. And I have that image of the skydivers falling together and holding hands, but something not quite as fast and dynamic as that, something more like we're all just learning to fall together to life as it is and supporting each other in the sadness and disappointment of that. Carolyn Atkinson, who wrote A Light in the Mind, which includes a lot about her teacher, Kobun Chino Roshi. She said, actually, in the moment of failure, and I would say falling, this is the place we really feel what it is to belong to the human family. This book she's written is a very beautiful book about the heart's release and about tenderness and about the relationship she had with her beloved teacher, Kobun Roshi. And it's also about the arc of how we sometimes think of our teachers as perfect. We want them to be perfect. We want them to be worked out. And we want to feel safe in that place. And the arc of the book is actually about how she opens to love and um, her own power and her own integrity by realizing that whilst her teacher is beloved to her, he is also just another person. She said, "He gave us the great gift of living his life in our midst. We who were his students spent time with him, and he was glorious and inspirational, and we felt inspired simply by being around him. But there was also this. Because he was willing to stay connected with us slowly, gradually, by paying close attention, we could also begin to see not just the glory of his presence, but also sometimes the sadness in his eyes. Occasionally he seemed isolated, even in the midst of many people. We began to notice that his life didn't always work out so perfectly. He too sometimes seemed to fall apart. He couldn't hold everything in his complicated world together all the time. Apparently, life for him was what we might call ordinary. It could be painful and difficult for him too." She says, "I think this was his greatest gift to me, actually. Finally, I understood that there was no other more perfect life to reach beyond this ordinary, embodied experience." I'm often so grateful in my life that when at any point there is a teaching for me, there is an inspiration or something that touches me. And it doesn't necessarily have to be through a Dharma talk or something from a teacher. It's just everywhere if I make myself available to it, like the watching the tennis match, initially for entertainment and then becoming very touched and then actually seeing something universal. 30 years ago, when Trudy and I had a young family, we watched a film called Parenthood, and Steve Martin was playing the part of Gil, and Mary Steenburgen was playing the part of Karen. And it's you could describe it as a comedy, but it's much more than that. And I watched it at a time when life was challenging with a young family. And the film is about the complexity of being parents with a young family. And in that film, I'm Gil, I'm Steve Martin, because he is constantly trying to um, not fall. He really struggles with the difficulties of his life and the complexities of his family. It's just a wonderful film for me. And in Zen, we often talk about a turning word, a word you hear which changes your life forever. And they're driving along together. And Steve Martin is bemoaning how awful his family is to his wife, Karen. And she turns to him and she says, "Gil, life is messy." I heard that and I thought, wow, that for me is like, oh, really? Life as it is? Life is messy. And she really sort of emphasized it, and I heard it. And I've always remembered that during my uh, wonderful, messy life. So I wonder what for you are turning words as this life goes on, as this season goes on. What do you see in your day that touches you and helps you to be with how you are? I want to finish with a quote by Shohaku Okamura. He's talking about practice. And I love this quote. He says, "There is no state to be attained other than the practice of letting go." So maybe this morning there is no state to be attained other than the practice of falling together. We practice within delusions and manifest enlightenment through sitting practice and day-to-day acts based on Zazen. This practice enables us to settle our whole existence on that ground, our whole existence on that ground. Our practice does not make us perfect or holy people. In a sense, practice means giving up trying to become perfect. It means realizing our imperfect nature. It's coming up to a year now since I was entrusted as a teacher. And, occasionally people say, "Oh, well, how's that going?" Really? How do you encapsulate that? I would say right now, if I think about the whole year, it's about learning how to fall. Thank you very much.